In the season finale, using the information that they've stolen, they've located an Imperial ship that happens to have Dr. Pershing on it. They neutralize the ship and board it, but one of the pilots takes Dr. Pershing hostage, trying to have some leverage against the Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Fennec, and Cara. He makes an unwise decision, though, when he starts mocking Cara about how he destroyed her planet, and that ends up getting him shot in the face. So they now have Dr. Pershing along with an Imperial ship. But the Mandalorian knows that he needs more than that. What he needs is Bo-Katan. They end up locating both Bo-Katan and Koska Reeves, and the Mandalorian says, "I need your help." But all Bo-Katan and Reeves can focus on is the fact that Boba Fett is not a Mandalorian. They start squabbling about that, but they do push it aside when the Mandalorian tells them what he needs them for. He explains that Moff Gideon has the child, and Bo-Katan says, "Well, I'm sorry, but he's gone." But the Mandalorian says, "No, I've located him." And that changes everything. She agrees to help the Mandalorian, but in exchange, they're going to keep Moff Gideon's cruiser in order to help retake Mandalore. She also wants the Darksaber, telling the Mandalorian that Moff Gideon has it, she wants it. Because with the Darksaber, she is so close to retaking Mandalore. She explains that the Darksaber is a very powerful weapon, and in fact, the only thing it can't cut through is pure Beskar. Although, truth be told, the Mandalorian says, "I don't really care about any of that, I just care about getting the child. So, if you want that, it's yours." They start going through the specifications of Moff Gideon's cruiser as Dr. Pershing is watching it, and Dr. Pershing actually fills them in on certain schematics about the cruiser. Namely, the fact that it used to have a bunch of people in it, but now it only has a few, and that's because it is full of dark troopers. Powerful droids that are extremely tough to take down. He also tells them where the child will be located and where Moff Gideon will be located. So the plan is to use Dr. Pershing's ship and act like it is being attacked by Boba Fett's. This will open the bay doors, and they're not going to ask too many questions because an Imperial ship is being attacked. So the Mandalorian, Cara, Reeves, Bo-Katan, Fennec, they're going to Trojan horse this thing. Now, initially, when they land in the cruiser, all of the women are going to take off, killing all of the stormtroopers on board, making a lot of noise on their way to the bay where Moff Gideon should be located. The Mandalorian is going to hide back a little bit, and while the women are distracting pretty much the entire ship, the Mandalorian is going to make his way to the child. They need to figure out, though, what to do about the Dark Troopers, and that is going to rest on the Mandalorian. It's his job to lock them in the bay door before they're deployed. So the plan goes into action, with Boba Fett pretending to attack this Imperial ship, and the ship making its way to the launch tube. And the Imperial cruiser lets them know, stay clear of the launch tube because they're launching out TIE fighters that can help fight off Boba Fett. But that's not part of the plan, and Bo-Katan isn't listening. She's going head on for the launch tube, not listening to instructions to stay clear of it. And she ends up kind of crashing the ship a little bit. Once she's in, though, Boba Fett takes off. And the soldiers who are in the cruiser immediately start yelling at the pilot to get that thing out of here because, it kind of crashed. But then the women pop out and start killing everybody. And that's when Moff Gideon knows he has a problem. He instructs his second-in-command to release all of the Dark Troopers. And as their women are making their way to Moff Gideon, the Mandalorian sneaks out quietly, making his way to the area where the Dark Troopers are. Unfortunately for the Mandalorian, he sees that they've been deployed, and he frantically goes to trap them in there, but one of them ends up getting out, and this thing is no joke. I mean, it's really doing a number on the Mandalorian like we've never seen before. And the Mandalorian is trying everything, including whistling birds, but nothing is working. He is, however, finally able to destroy it when he takes his Beskar spear and shoves it right in its neck, ripping off its head. He then makes his way over to the terminal and releases all of the Dark Troopers into space. Now, at this point, the women have made their way to the front of the ship where Moff Gideon is supposed to be located, but he's not. And that's because Moff Gideon is standing above the child with a Darksaber. And when the Mandalorian shows up, he's pretty surprised and also pretty concerned for the child. Moff Gideon makes him drop his blaster, and the Mandalorian tells him, "I just want the kid." But he says, "No, the kid's fine." Moff Gideon tells him how he knows that he's with Bo-Katan, and admits that the Darksaber used to belong to Bo-Katan. He figures that they've arrived at the bridge and they're probably seeking him, or more accurately, the Darksaber, because Bo-Katan wants the Darksaber because it brings power. He tells the Mandalorian that whoever wields the Darksaber has every right to lay claim to the Mandalorian throne. But the Mandalorian doesn't want it, telling him to keep it. He just wants to get the child and get out of there. So it seems like the two have struck a deal. Moff Gideon is going to keep the Darksaber, and the Mandalorian's going to grab the child and go. And the two hope to never run into each other. And this works for Moff Gideon because he says, "I've already got what I want from the child. I wanted his blood." The kid has been blessed with potential and rare possibilities to bring order back to the galaxy. So, yeah, sure, take him. But when the Mandalorian goes to get him, Moff Gideon reneges on their offer and tries to attack him with a darksaber. But the Mandalorian is covered in Beskar, so it's not really working. And the two put up a fight, but eventually the Mandalorian, along with his Beskar spear, are able to get Moff Gideon to drop the darksaber. And the Mandalorian handcuffs Moff Gideon and has him at the mercy of the darksaber. He brings him to the bridge where you can tell that Bo-Katan is not happy. And that's because the darksaber is now the Mandalorian's. Moff Gideon explains that the only way to wield the darksaber is to win it in battle. And you can't give it away because the Mandalorian tries to do that with Bo-Katan, and that's not the way this works. She legitimately has to beat him in a battle. He can't just simply yield. And it is quite upsetting to Bo-Katan. She thought she was getting this thing back. She thought that she could lay claim to the Mandalorian throne, and now the Mandalorian has it. And there's really nothing she can do about it other than to beat him up. But the group is interrupted when they're about to be boarded, not by people, but by dark troopers. The same dark troopers who were sucked out of the cargo bay, well, they've come back. And Moff Gideon is beside himself with glee because he knows that the Mandalorian struggled with just one of them. What are they going to do against a fleet of them? So he puts the child down and tells him, "Don't worry, kid, I'll get you out of this." And the group closes the doors and gets ready for whatever's on the other side of these things. The Dark Troopers, meanwhile, have started to try to punch their way through it. But as they're doing that, an X-Wing shows up. And they try to get in touch with who's ever in the cockpit, but he doesn't answer. And Cara even makes the joke of, "Yay, we're saved, one X-Wing." But when that X-Wing shows up, it definitely piques Grogu's interest. And the Dark Troopers stop punching. And that's because that X-Wing had a Jedi on it. And Moff Gideon's smile turns to straight fear. At one point, he ends up jumping up and shooting Reeves and trying to shoot the child, but the Mandalorian dives in front of the bullets. He then tries to commit suicide so he doesn't give up any secrets, but Cara Dune is able to knock the gun away and knock him out. And now the group is simply watching this Jedi go through these Dark Troopers like a hot knife through butter. And when he gets to the door, the Mandalorian opens it up because the Mandalorian knows the Jedi is there for the child. And when the Jedi walks through, calm and cool and collected, he puts down his hood and it's a young Luke Skywalker in the flesh. He gestures to the child for him to come with him, but the Mandalorian says he doesn't want to go with you. And Luke says, well, that's because he's waiting for your permission. Luke explains the child has a bunch of talent and ability, but he needs training. He swears to the Mandalorian that he will give his life to protect the child, but the child will truly not be saved until he masters all of his powers. So after this convincing speech, the Mandalorian goes and picks up the child and explains that the child is going to go with Luke Skywalker because he's one of his kind. He also promises the child that he will see him again. And the child is kind of soaking this all in, and the Mandalorian realizes that this truly might be the last time he does see the child. So he does something he's only done once before. He takes off his helmet so the child can see his face. He then says goodbye to the child, and the child waddles his way over to Luke Skywalker to be picked up. And then Luke, the child, and even R2-D2 end up taking off as the Mandalorian, who still has his helmet off, is left pretty emotional, saying goodbye to his friend. But that is not the end of Season 2. Because after this went down, Fennec and Boba Fett went to go pay an old friend a visit on Tatooine, Bib Fortuna. Bib was on the throne of Jabba the Hutt's palace, running things just like Jabba the Hutt. But both Boba Fett, Fennec kill him, and Boba Fett claims Jabba's throne. And that is the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Like the video if you liked it. Hit thumbs down if you don't. But please just don't be a jerk in the comments section. And if you do write something in the comments section and I don't get back to you, it's just because I usually try to stay away from comments, because usually the comment section is a cesspool. But feel free to write your theories and what you thought of this season down below.